Joining me right now in the studio is the leader of the real SPLM, one of the main opposition groups here, that is General Pagan Amum. It's good to have you with us in our media studio, and thank you for accepting our invitation in a short notice. Welcome.
It's my pleasure, and let me first say good morning to your listeners in Juba and all over South Sudan, as well as also those who listen to you over the World Wide Web. I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Briefly, take us through how did we arrive to where we are right now, the Tumaini Initiative, General Pagan?
Well, the Tumaini Initiative came as a result of the initiative of President Salva Kiir Mayardit, who requested his brother, His Excellency President William Ruto of the Republic of Kenya, to mediate between the government and SOMA. And we responded to that effort by President William Ruto when he accepted to mediate between us. And the background of these discussions is that when we were in Rome in June last year, the government walked out from the Rome talks mediated by the community of Sant'Egidio, and because we disagreed on the agenda and the discussion. So President Kiir then decided to look for a different forum, and he contacted the government of Kenya, and here we are. Of course, there are a lot of challenges that we met on the way up to here, but here we are discussing.
Yes. And people are wondering, there was an ongoing process already in the initiative of the Sant'Egidio, General Pagan, and I understand the discussions or the negotiations where many people were terming it as shaky, boycotting, or sometimes the government suspends the discussion, sometimes the opposition groups also have different views on that, but then the discussion was still ongoing, and there were calls for the resumptions of the discussion. All of a sudden, we found ourselves in Kenya. Now, what happens, first of all, to the Rome process?
In the Rome process, simply the government walked out from Rome, and when one party, especially the government, if it chooses to walk out from any mediation, then that mediation collapses in a way. Now, the government has been on and off with the Rome process. Sometimes they suspend their participation in the talks. Other time they come up with different reasoning that they do not agree with the agenda or what is proposed by the other side, and instead of continuing to negotiate, as I said, in June last year, they walked out, and we are also grateful that President Kiir decided to contact and request President Ruto to mediate. And President Ruto took up the challenge to organize this process, which they have branded as Tumaini Initiative, as Hope Initiative, to bring hope to the people of South Sudan for peace, and as well as for the region and the continent. As we heard President Ruto in the launching of this process. So that is the background, and these are the difficulties. Of course, it is normal in negotiations of a political negotiations in a society that is divided, or severely divided, and also violent. Talks will witness ups and downs. That was the case between the SPLM and the NCP government, or the governments of Sudan. Over the years, talks are initiated, sometimes collapse, other times they are suspended and they are resumed, depending on the situation in the country.
Right. And now here we are, as we said, these discussions here started since last month. How would you assess the process so far, and what do you make of it, and where are we, General Taban, as of today?
First of all, we are grateful to the government of Kenya and President William Ruto for taking up the initiative, for launching this, and for also mobilizing not only the government of Kenya, but also the region and the continent, as well as the international community, to support this process in the search for peace in our country. The launching was a big success, and we thank President Ruto and his team for organizing that launch and also branding the initiative as Tumaini Initiative, Hope Initiative. And it attracted a lot of regional, continental, and international presence and initial support. That is one. Number two, these talks are coming in a very critical moment in our history and in our life. I believe South Sudan, with the failure of the implementation of RRCs, and even despite the extension, still the parties and the government failed to usher South Sudan into peace and democracy. And this failure threatens the very existence of South Sudan itself. There's fear of it collapsing into chaos and disorder. So this Tumaini Initiative, in our view, is a golden opportunity for South Sudanese to engage in a serious soul search and a serious dialogue, not only as negotiations between or among the parties, but rather as a national duty and responsibility to rescue the country. And from the day of the launch, we met with President Kiir, organized by the government of Kenya, the State House, and we were able to agree that our task together, all of us, and President Kiir addressed both delegations, that our task in this process is to rescue the country. These are his words, to rescue the country. And we have taken up that task very diligently, very seriously. The third major success is that President William Ruto appointed General Lazarus Sambayo to lead this mediation and to guide the South Sudanese parties in their search for permanent peace in our country. And you know, General Lazarus Sambayo was the one who led the mediation between the government of Sudan then and the SPLM, SPLA, which led to the birth of South Sudan. He midwives that process which led to the independence of South Sudan. And here now he is engaged with the South Sudanese to rescue this new nation, new state, to avoid it collapsing into chaos and disorder. That by itself is meaningful, and it is a big source of possibility of success. So that was another win for this process. Of course, he is assisted by able team of mediators, including his deputy, Dr. Muhammad Guyu, Ambassador Muhammad Guyu, who was also involved in these all processes, including the various attempts to find peace in South Sudan, whether with the 2015 agreement or with the 2018 agreement. He has been involved, very knowledgeable about South Sudan and its beginning. Of course, they have been joined by the community of Sant'Egidio, who were the mediators between us and the government, and they are co-mediators. That is again another good decision by President William Ruto to make sure that they accompany Sant'Egidio as a mediator who has been working for 4 years to attempt to solve the problem. These, in my view, are all initial successes of the process. But then when we started to discuss we started by issuing a declaration of commitment, and the parties in the first week were able to declare their commitment to a number of things. And we then entered into discussing the various issues to address the root causes of the conflict. And as you know, this is not an easy process. We are a highly divided country. And the talks went well, the engagement. The talks went well, and as usual, with the division and lack of trust and confidence among the parties, we were able also to engage ourselves as South Sudanese to build trust and confidence among ourselves, and to look at the psychological aspects of what divides us. It was a very deep exercise that was helpful and healing, and I'm sure that has created an environment of a healthy environment and a positive environment that will help us address the critical issues that we have in both in the issues of constitution making, the political issues, the issues of economy, the issues of justice and accountability, reconciliation, and all that. In the end, of course, we want to rescue the country. We want to achieve a genuine transition to permanent peace and stability, where South Sudanese can get the opportunity to rebuild their lives and to heal as a nation, and use that to engage in state and nation building, which is really our primary historical task as the present generations.
And General Pagan would like to understand the position of real SPLM in terms of some of the key issues which might be discussed or have already been discussed here on security, on governance, on economy, justice, among many others. The position of real SPLM.
I would prefer to be talking of the position of the opposition, okay, because when we came different opposition group, both from Soma, that is participating here, as well as other opposition movements who were not part of the Rome process or part of Soma. So we sat and discussed and agreed to negotiate with the government as one single opposition movement's alliance. So our position is one. There's no movement. We are all the leaders of all the organization. They work together in a committee. They have asked me to speak on their behalf and lead our negotiating team. But of course, we have not formalized our alliance in form of one single organization or alliance.
But for now, you just lead.
We are working together. We are working together. We are working together. Our position is one. So our position on the main issues being discussed here is the following. First, our overriding objective is to rescue the country, is avoid its return to conflict. Number two is to work to achieve a genuine breakthrough to peace and good governance in South Sudan. You know very well that there have been many agreements that have been signed and not implemented. With these agreements, governments have been formed that fail to implement the transitional programs or the agreements and led the country back to war. And the transitions from 2011, after independence, ended with a war in 2013. The agreement in 2015 ended with a return to war in 2016. And the revitalized agreement also, its transition ended without it achieving that transition to peace and stability and good governance, or handing back the power to the people to elect their government periodically in free and fair elections. And they were forced to extend. We are now almost near the end of the extension, and still the parties in the government or the parties of RRCs are still even discussing whether the country is ready for elections or not. There are those who are saying we're going for election, others are saying the conditions for elections are not provided. The country is not united, all the requirements or the prerequisites for holding elections have not been fulfilled. The permanent constitution is not there. And you can see that the talk now is about if you do not hold elections, there will be violence. If you hold elections, there will be violence. This is a very dangerous stage we have reached in. So our task here,
as the opposition,
not only as the opposition, as South Sudanese, all of us, our responsibility is how to avoid another return to war, how to make sure that we also don't get into a situation of vacuum with extensions that are not helping to achieve peace or implement agreement or reform the state. And the state is increasingly falling into deeper crisis, and the society as a whole is gripped with many crises. Take, for example, you can see the mismanagement of resources has led to very severe and serious economic crisis, to the point that the state is not capable to carry out its function, whether to provide security and protection of the citizens, whether to pursue the national interest abroad. The embassies are almost closing, the diplomats are becoming homeless and thrown out from their places. They are not being paid. They are not even paid up to now. The civil servants are not being paid. The teachers are not being paid. The army are not being paid. The police are not being paid. You can imagine that the state is actually dwindling and disappearing in our eyes. These are very serious challenges. As we speak, the country is experiencing, and our people are experiencing, a very severe hunger, and there is a danger of that becoming a serious famine in the country. And humanitarian assistance is very difficult, and the government is incapable. The international community and donor community have also lost confidence in the government. They cannot support because they say, if you don't manage well your resources, how do you expect us to come and help you? So this is a total crisis. We need now to salvage the country out of this, and also the state.
So you believe this initiative is now the solution to all the challenges you've just mentioned?
I believe this is our last opportunity as a people.
So many agreements have been signed. You've participated in so many discussions.
Yes.
Going back to the CPA, so the concern of the people of South Sudan back home there, General Pagan, is that people have almost lost hope in the discussions or the issues of agreements. They're saying agreements after agreements, extension of extension. Now, what's new really? How can we convince the people back home there that this can be a hope for them?
Absolutely. First of all, this initiative, which is started by President Kiir, it's coming at a very critical moment, as we just agreed and talked about. Secondly, President Ruto is reading very clearly the situation we have in South Sudan, which also affects Kenya and the region. And therefore, the way this has been designed, even though in the beginning the thinking was about for the opposition to join the process of elections and all that, But with the discussion we have engaged in and coming to the realization of the situation, of deep crisis that we are in now, the thinking now is to negotiate and address the root causes. Why this is going to be different round? Because we are learning also from our experience as South Sudanese. We are asking ourselves, why have we failed to build a peaceful and a prosperous country? Why have we failed to build a country where our people live in peace among themselves? And why there is violence? Why are our communities divided? And why have we failed to implement agreements that we have signed? There is a wealth of experience that we have as South Sudanese. And from this, the parties here are working to craft solutions to these challenges and crises that we have. This process is answering these questions that we have raised. But also we are negotiating, having in mind the lessons from our failures to bring peace to our country. And that is why we are very hopeful that this will lead to a breakthrough. And here is why we are hopeful in this process. First, in our discussion, we have come to the realization that we need to make this process inclusive. Inclusive of all South Sudanese stakeholders. And this process, in our view, would transform itself into a national constitutional conference, an inclusive national constitutional conference. And we expect the National Constitutional Conference and these negotiations to have the following outcome. One, a constitutional text that is going to be the basic law of the nation, that will be expressing the new social contract all South Sudanese stakeholders will arrive at. And with that, we will then expect this process to deliver a new transitional governance arrangement, learning from all our experiences of transitional governance arrangements from after independence. Thirdly, this process will deliver a very clear transitional program developed in such a way that these programs would be very clearly identified with matrix of implementation, with also quantification of costs, and we expect this process to also lead to a very clear, strong modalities of implementation that literally become automatic and independent in terms of implementation, to avoid the obstructions that the parties to the agreements engaged in because they are either undermining each other or repositioning themselves to strengthen themselves and weaken their opponents that they may see, which has been also one of the sources. And then at the end, it will involve a very clear process of management of our own resources to implement the agreement, to avoid waste and mismanagement of resources and corruption, and also to create a very strong trust and confidence in the new transitional governance arrangement and implementation mechanism. And with that, we launch and seek the support from the region and the continent and the international community.
And are we talking about the implementation matrix you just talked about and whatever you just mentioned, especially the issue of the management of resources and implementation time frame? Will this be implemented by the current government, or we are talking about having a new government now in place? Don't you think in a way this is like abrogating the current revitalized peace agreement?
We are talking of, yes, new transitional arrangements arising from this. Do not forget that this negotiation is between the current government, the reconstituted or revitalized government of national unity that was formed by RRCs and the opposition. So the government is here on the table. And secondly, do not forget also that the RRCs transition and time frame has ended long time ago. Moreover, the extension that the parties have carried out is just ending in 7 months from now. By December, the parties were supposed to hand over back the power to the people to elect their government. And by February next year, in few months, the RRCs, the Artigono, should have handed over to the elected government. But given the realities that we have in the country, this agreement has not been implemented, and the Artigono is not able to hand over power to the government, to the people to elect their government. And the conditions for that have not been fulfilled. And remember that the agreement says that the Artigono will lead the process of the building of the permanent constitution of South Sudan, which will be the basis for holding elections. The constitution will define what are the electable positions, what is the form of the government that we have, and what would be the system that our people will choose their government in free and fair elections. This has not been delivered. But this is not only the failure of the Artigono. This is our collective failures as South Sudanese. Remember, at independence, we formed a transitional government in 2011. And we gave that government to engage in the process of permanent constitution making and deliver that constitution by 2014 or 2013 and then organize elections by 2015. That did not happen. We took the country to war. and it kept on. We got trapped in that vicious cycle of failing to adopt permanent constitution, going to war, forming transitional government, postponing elections, and on, and then returning the country to war. This is the core of the crisis. But we are now aspiring out of order totally. The country the state may actually disappear. You can see it.
And Pagan, you talked about having a suggestion or position of having a national constitutional conference.
Yes.
Having a constitutional text, for instance, that's what you mentioned.
Yes.
And don't you think this constitution is supposed to be people-centered constitution? Why having national conference? Because people of South Sudan should have a say on the permanent constitution in the country. And the process is still ongoing according to revitalized peace agreement.
Absolutely.
No.
And that is actually the proposal is precisely to have the people of South Sudan own the process and engage in the process. We are saying, let us move away from limiting the negotiations to the political elite in the country. Let us involve all the South Sudanese stakeholders. That is to say, create a wider circle where the political parties in the government and in the opposition will participate as stakeholders, but also involve our religious leaders in the process as a stakeholder, as South Sudanese stakeholders, and not limit their role only to pray for us and to extort us to build peace or bring peace to our people, but to engage in actually bringing peace to the country. Let us involve our traditional leaders. Let us involve our women leaders. And let us involve our youth leaders. Let us involve our civil society. And they come in a process larger than simply the political parties reducing this to their own club, because most of the time when the discussion is limited to the political parties, they end up with power sharing agreements becoming the main concern, and seldomly they have also neglected or forgotten to implement the core of the transitional programs. And this makes the entire process and the real crisis to be underpinned by power struggle and power sharing, and also the process becomes who has got the bigger guns takes the lion's share. And this is breeding rebellion and breeding violence and more violence and crisis in the country. Just imagine from the time when in 2013 the crisis was within one single party, the SPLM, which divided into three. In the first stage of conflict of 2013, the parties that went and sat on the table were the SPLM in government, the SPLM-IO, and the SPLM-FDs. That was the 2013 agreement. It was literally exclusive to SPLM faction. They went to Abuja, they signed the Abuja agreement. After 2015, and when the agreement of 2015 collapsed in 2016 with a return to war, the parties to the second civil war became more, and the parties mushroomed. Many organizations sprang up, and some organizations were those who were fighting against the government formed SOA, and the SPLM-IO was there. The SPLM-IG continued with the government. They were the incumbent government. And the 2018 agreement also, after 2018 negotiation, other parties also sprang up in the country. Like SSUF, for example, even as the real SPLM, we split as...
and so many groups split, they are here now in this initiative.
Yes, so you can see this is a dangerous trend. That is why we are saying, let us transform this process into an inclusive process that will have stakeholders representing all our people, and not limited to the political elite in the country.
All right. Now let's go back to our main studio in Juba and have the conversation more interactive with members of the public, for those who are following us right there in South Sudan and also other parts of the country, and also those who are around the world. You can now dial 0911-986-986 or send a text to 0913-986-986, and I hand over the microphone briefly to my colleague Al-Hadi Hawari before we cross to the news desk in for Arabic. I read you, Al-Hadi Hawari.
الحركة الشعبية يتكلم عن جديد شنو في المفاوضات بتاعت نيروبي. ده الأسئلة الدائرة في مجال بتاع مدينة جوبا. هو أنت كفاجان أموم أنت كنت في السلطة وكنت أمين عام الحركة الشعبية. هتجيب جديد شنو؟ السلطة يعني هتجيب جديد شنو؟ وظيفتك في السلطة وأنت يعني في كثير من الكلام داير، وأنا بشوف كان في نقاش في واحد من المواقع التواصل الاجتماعي هو يتكلم فيه عن الشغل الماشي في نيروبي، لكن انا ده المستمع البسيط بتاعي راديو خليه عارف، فانا مو مدينا ملخص بسيط في اقل من دقيقتين ويقول وبرضه يجاوب على السؤال بتاع الجديد شنو اللي هم جايبوه كمعارضه الان مجتمعين في نيروبي، لانه المواطن البسيط بيقول بالنسبه لفادانا مو كازول الرجل التحرري هو يعني شارك في كل ما عنده من القوه شراسه لحد ما جينا في اتفاقيه برشلونه 2005. لكن بعد ذاك هو كان مشارك في السلطه. هل زمن ذاك هو عنده مساهماته؟ ده سؤال له. قبل ما نرفع بعض من مكالمات المستمعين حقنا. تفضل.
شكرا جزيلا الاخ الهادي هواري، ونسلم من جديد على مستمعينكم في جوبا وفي كل مكان. العملية اللي نحن فيه هنا سموه الرئيس الكيني والحكومة الكينية إنها هي مبادرة الأمل، عشان يجيب أمل لشعب بتاع جنوب السودان، والهدف منه هو تحقيق لسلام شامل واستقرار في جنوب السودان. وده طبعا مبادرة قام به الرئيس الكيني بطلب من الرئيس سلفا كير ميارديت، ونحن الآن في مفاوضات الجديد هيكون شنو في المفاوضات ده؟ انه نحن اولا شايلين معنا التجربة بتاعت جنوب السودان كله، تجاربنا من الاستقلال لهسه وكيف ما لقينا سلام شامل واستقرار في بلد بتاعنا، وكيف انه الاتفاقيات المختلفة فشل عشان يحقق سلام ونظام بتاع حكم راشد اللي بيقدر يبني بلد نقدر نلقى فيه حرية واستقرار ورفاهية لكل الشعب. والمفاوضات الآن نحن قاعدين نناقشوا جذور الأزمة وأسباب بتاع فشل بتاع تحقيق السلام. فده الجديد، إنه ده تجربة فريدة وبيجي كمان في وقت إنه البلد وصل لنقطة بتاعت خطر لانهيار إلى فوضى وعدم استقرار شامل وانهيار بتاع الدولة ذاته بسبب الأزمات الكثيرة اللي نحن عايشينه في بلد. فده هو الجديد، ونحن عندنا أمل إنه المبادرة ده ممكن يحقق سلام وانتقال لنظام ديمقراطي وانتقال بتاع الشعب بتاعنا لمرحلة لبناء الدولة وبناء الأمة كالمهمات الأساسية بالنسبة لنا بعد الاستقلال. نحن بنقول إنه المفاوضات ده لازم يتحول لمنبر يجمع كل أصحاب المصلحة في جنوب السودان. All the stakeholders must come together, not only the political parties, but also representatives of our women, representative of our youth, representative of our civil society, representative of our religious leaders and our traditional leaders. We have to come together to bring back South Sudan to the path of state and nation building. ده التحدي الأكبر بالنسبة لنا، لأنه بعد أكثر من 12 سنة البلد لو نحن ما عملنا حسابنا ماشي للانهيار. لو انتم شايفين الحاجات الجاري حولنا في مثلا السودان، الدولة السودانية انهارت. You can say that now. Let us be focused to rescue our country and avoid it collapsing into chaos and disorder. انتوا شايفين المشاكل الحاصل في كل محلات. شوف العنف الحاصل في على النيل، في بحر غزال، في استوائية. ده لازم نحن ننتبه له، في جنجلة، في محلات ده كله. ده النقطة الأولى، نركز لإنقاذ البلد ونمنع ما ينهار والدولة يتشتت. نقطة نمرة 2 من كلام بتاع الأخوان إنه نحن كنا في التحرير وكنا في الحكومة وكده. الموضوع هسه ده ما موضوع بتاع إنه منو كان وين ومنو كان في محل ومنو قاعد وين. ده الموضوع هسه إنه كيف نحن ننقذ الشعب بتاعنا ونطلعه برا من الأزمات الكثيرة ده، زي المجاعة الحاصل، زي المشكلة بتاعت التغير المناخي والفيضانات الماشي، والطريقة الشعب بتاعنا بقوا يعني نازحين ولاجئين في محلات كتير. وبالتالي التركيز زي ما كلام اللي قاله ديفيد، التركيز في انه كيف نحن نحقق حياة افضل وننهي المعاناة بتاع الشعب بتاعنا في كل مكان.
نعم،
ده الكلام المهم.
نعم، وديفيد برضه يتكلم عن انه يعني انتوا كنتوا طبعا ليبريترز، وكمان الموضوع بتاع مفترض يعني ما ترجعوا تجيبوا براكم بدون مؤيدات. وهم ذكر مثلا زي توماس سيريلو.
نعم.
and you looking for positions really out of this initiative. ده برضه concern هو.
ايوه. الموضوع هسه ده ما موضوع بتاع وظائف. عشان كده قبل انا قلت انه يا اخوانا المفاوضات ده ما يخلوه للتنظيمات السياسية براهم، لأنه إذا خليته للتنظيمات السياسية الكلام هيكون قسمة بتاع سلطة ووظائف، وبيحصل إهمال للقضايا بتاع المواطن. المفاوضات ده مفروض يكون مفاوضات شاملة وبيجمع and we call it an inclusive process. It must be inclusive. حتى نحن قاعدين نتكلم مع اخواننا في سوما لاسباب هم مقتنعين به والناس عارفين قرروا انه ما يجوا هنا، لكن بنناشدهم انه لازم يجوا يشاركوا، لانه الموضوع هنا ده موضوع بتاع انقاذ بتاع البلد من المخاطر اللي هسه وقع على الشعب بتاعنا في كل مكان. الموضوع ما تقسيم بتاع سلطة، الموضوع بتاع انه نحن لازم نطلع البلد من الحلقة الشريرة اللي نحن فوقه هسه. وبالتالي التركيز لازم يكون على شنو؟ واحد انه يكون عندنا دستور دائم للبلد كأساس للحكم في البلد، ويعبر عن العقد الاجتماعي الجديد كالشعب. نحن بنقول دايرين نبني لنا الدولة عشان الدولة ده يخدمنا في كده وكده وكده وكده، ونديها سلطات كده، ويحترموا الحريات بتاع المواطن ويخدموا المواطن. موضوعنا هسه انه كيف نحن نبني لنا الدولة اللي بيقدر يخدم الشعب بتاعنا وبيقدر يحقق كل الوعود اللي نحن قدمناه في زمن بتاع تحرير. الموضوع هسه في انه كيف نحن نعمل اصلاح في البلد ونحقق السلام في بلد الشعب بتاعنا بقى مقسمين. كيف نحن نوقف الانقسامات ده والحروبات الحاصل والعنف بين المواطنين بتاعنا في كل مكان، يا بسبب بتاع خلافات وصراع حول الارض، او بسبب بتاع نهب بتاع ابقار ولا غيره، او بسبب بتاع انه السياسيين ذاته بيجوا بينشروا قبليه وبيقسموا الشعب لاقاليم، بيقسموا الشعب لقبائل، وبيخلوا الشعب بتاعنا يحاربوا بعض. دي الحاجات اللي احنا المفروض نركز عليها. شكرا
جزيلا. ده الحاجه المتوقعين يطلع من المخرجات
بكل تاكيد.
طيب قبل ما نختم جنرال باغان أموم، انا داير تورينا بكل اختصار what are we expecting today here, what is going to happen
today. We are having consultations, نقاشات هسه في انه العمليه بتاعت بناء الدستور هيتم كيف. نحن بنناقش القضايا بتاعت نظام الحكم في الفترة الانتقالية قبل النظام الدائم على حسب الدستور الدائم. بنناقش القضايا بتاعت إدارة بتاعت الموارد وإدارة الأزمة الاقتصادية اللي نحن ماشيين فيه، وبالإضافة لكيف نحن نحققوا رتق النسيج الاجتماعي، لأنه الشعب بتاعنا بقى مقسم وبقى في صراعات وحروب وعنف كثير في بلد. ده كل القضايا نحن ماشيين فيه، والوساطة ماشي بتركيز على إنه نحن نقدر ننجز القضايا دي كلها، خاصة قبل ما النهاية بتاعت الشرعية للحكومة المنشطة الآن، وده هيكون مع ديسمبر وفبراير الجاي. شكرا لك.
شكرا لك. رسالة أخير قبل ما نختم.
والله أنا داير أقدم مناشدة لكل المواطنين. أنا داير أطلب من كل مواطن في جنوب السودان وكل مواطن جنوبي في داخل البلد أو في خارج البلد، إنه جاء الوقت إنه نحن نوحد بعض ونلم يدينا سوا ننقذ البلد بتاعنا ده من الأزمات اللي نحن فوقه. البلد بتاعنا في خطر، وانتم شايفين الإقليم والعالم بقى يتحول لوضع صعب جدا، فيه صراعات كتير. ما في طريقة لنا إلا نحن ننقذ بلدنا بأنفسنا، وده ما بيجي إلا بوحدة. أنا بناشد كل أخواننا في المعارضة الماجة شاركوا إنه يجوا يشاركوا. بناشد الحكومة إنه يكون لهم الاستعداد إنه نناقش القضايا ده، ما قضية بتاع إنه يدافعوا عن الحكومة ونحن نهاجم حكومة وندافع عن أنفسنا في معارضة. لا، نحن كلنا لازم نقعد في محل واحد بفكر واضح إنه كلنا كمواطنين من جنوب السودان بصرف النظر عن مواقعنا كلنا نتوحدوا عشان نطلع بلدنا من الأزمة اللي نحن فوقها الآن. وعندنا مشاكل كتير لازم نحل المشاكل ده، ما في طريقة وما في زول بيجي من محل تاني عشان يحل المشاكل تاني، ده نحن ذاته كلنا. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا جزيلا جنرال باغان أموم للزمن اللي اديتنا للاستضافة لبرنامج الدون الصباحي.